Do you want to improve in your photography? Doesn't matter if you're an amateur or a pro, we all want to get better. And if you've watched my channel, if you've taken my one-on-one classes, you know that I'm a huge believer in the power of personal projects. In order to improve, we need to focus and we need discipline. And personal projects provide you with those parameters to work on that foundation as a photographer and to develop those skills and to find your style as a photographer. And it can be a daunting task, but don't worry, fear not. Today I'm going to give you guys 3 project ideas. I encourage you to do all 3 of them, but start with one. So 3 project ideas, and I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on how to start those project ideas, how to improve your photography, how to get started on your first personal project. Okay guys, as always, don't forget to check out my online store at justinmott.com where I've got presets like this one starting at $4.99 that will not make you a better photographer, but they will add some popular images. I've got a variety of one-on-one classes for people that are looking for a portfolio review, people that are looking for something a little more long-term commitment. I've got my mentorship program. There's a bunch of packages to choose from on there, so check all those out. There's something for everybody on there, for anyone who wants to just get better, pros, amateurs, all genres. I've also got prints that make great gifts over the holidays. And lastly, I know it's a long promo here, but it's Christmas time. Got to sell something, got to push something. Lastly, I've got my Vietnam workshop that will be in northern Vietnam, in Hanoi and Sapa, focusing on travel and street photography. It's going to be a lot of fun. There are 10 slots total. There's only about 5 slots left right now. It's in March 2023. It's a week-long workshop. You can check all the information, all of that out at justinmott.com, and I also put a link in the description box below. All right, let's get into it. I'm not going to talk big about the why you need to do a personal project. If you've been following me for a long time, you already know the why. For me, it's had the biggest impact on my growth as a photographer. It's where I've found my style as a photographer, and it's where I've made all my big gains, is working on personal projects throughout my entire career. Just starting out in Cambodia and in Vietnam, working on stories about victims of Agent Orange. And then even now, right now, my passion, what I'm working on now, is all my wildlife photojournalism stories. So stories like this one about the last 2 northern white rhinos, but all sorts of different stories about people helping animals around the world. That's what I'm doing right now. And that's where I've always made my gains, always, no matter what level I'm at in my career, just starting out or now as a grizzled old veteran. Why? Well, because when you're working on a personal project, it gives you the time to focus on one thing. It gives you time to make mistakes. When you go out, as a pro, you go out on assignment, you can't really just try new things too often. You've got to execute, you've got to deliver. As a commercial photographer, you've got to really nail the shots. There's a lot at stake. There's the models, there's a client, there's a whole team there counting on you. You don't have time to what would it be like if we tried this? I mean, I always put a little bit of time in for that. And as an editorial photographer, when you're covering assignments and things like that, again, same thing. You've got to deliver. You've got to deliver on deadline, and you've got to deliver something good. You've got to deliver what's on your website, because that's where they hired you. And as an amateur, oftentimes amateurs, I always see they go to these exotic locations for a big workshop or something like that. Or they go for 1 week to Europe, and they go out and they shoot, they travel, and they think it's all their best photos because they show me in their portfolio review, oh, this is my trip to Venice. They really want to push that work out there, and it's often not their best work because they didn't go there and really work on their craft. They just went there and shot all the shots they already took back at home with just maybe what they perceive as better, more interesting people, more interesting landscape. It's just new to them. It doesn't mean it's necessarily better because you haven't really worked on your craft. Now, project allows you to do that. Working on a project allows you to fail, allows you to take a step back and look around a bit, allows you to slow down as a photographer and think, allows you to develop different skills in your composition, the way you compose light, the way you use light to tell the story, the way you sequence your images. There's an endless list of reasons. I'm not going to get into them. Well, I kind of did just already get into them. But it can be a daunting task. When I talk to amateurs or new photographers, and I sort of tell them about okay, I want you to focus on a project, they kind of look at me perplexed, well, that's not for me. I'm not a pro, or how do I do it? Where do I start? And it can be overwhelming and confusing because a lot of people think they need to start big, right? You need that huge project that's going to change the way humanity looks at whatever, or you're going to this big project about poverty or global warming, and all those concepts are great, but it's not great for the first project. You need to start small. You need to build a foundation. You need to figure out who you are before you embark on that legacy project. And that legacy project isn't just reserved for professionals like me. Anyone can do anything like this, and anyone can have an outlet. I mean, there's different ways to self-publish, different ways to have an exhibition. You don't need to be a big name. So I encourage everyone to shoot for the stars, but I Also encourage you guys out there to start small. Again, build that foundation so that when you go out and do that legacy project, that big project, that finally, oh, this is my passion, this is what I'm into, like for me, animals or whatever you're into out there. I don't know, what are you into? Tell me in the comment section. And by the way, just take a moment right now, if you're new here watching this channel, a couple things just quickly I want to throw out there. One, if you like what you're seeing, take a moment to hit the like button, maybe subscribe, and if you really like it, you really like what you're seeing here, you can join my membership program for $4.99 a month, where you get exclusive content, you get weekly live streams, you also get priority in the comment section. Again, check that out by hitting the join button, $4.99 a month. So everything I'm going to mention today might not seem that sexy to start with, but it's all very attainable. It's all something that anyone can do just in their backyard, something very close. And that's the point here, is to start small, because you're more likely to do it, and you're more likely to do it consistently. And that's what it's going to take to improve, is to have the discipline, have the focus. So number one on my list is to document your neighborhood. Very simple. Whatever that is for you guys. If you live in a big city, document a certain neighborhood in the city. If you live in a small town, document Main Street. What do I mean by that? Well, tell the story of it. Think about this little mini project as a way to share where you're from to other people in the world. Treat it like a travel story. You're going to want to get some shots on the street of everyday life, so using street photography. You're going to want to go into some of the shops and photograph some of what people are selling there, and maybe the shop owners, and some portraits, and get to know people and talk to them. Don't just barge in with your camera, but go talk to people. Go to the local barbershop, talk to the people there, ask them if you can take their photograph. Ask them if you can just document life happening in the barbershop while it's happening. Document local sports going on. Document people in the park on the weekend. Document the details, the architecture of the neighborhood. There's so many things you could photograph. Just spend some time every single week doing it. It doesn't have to be every single day, but make it a couple hours of the day on the weekend, a Saturday morning or Sunday morning. Try to do it in good light. I highly recommend that, but obviously you need to weigh out when things are happening. But think about how to tell that story, and then overall shots of the area. Where can you get up high to look at the main street or the neighborhood, or get good shots of the architecture and things like that. And look for all the details. What is it about your town? What is it about your area? What is it about your main street that makes it unique? And then don't worry that the story's not so narrow in the beginning. Start broad and let the story come to you. Maybe the story is about the people. Maybe it's about the architecture. Try in the beginning to do a little bit of both, and then see where your eye goes and see where your creative mind goes. So that's the first one. Story idea number two is to document a family member or a friend. I think preferably in this situation, maybe if you're older like me, it might be to document your parents. Or if you're a little bit younger, it might be to document your grandparents. One, worst case scenario, it's great bonding time for you to sort of learn about their life and hang out with your grandparents and get to know them a little bit better. But two, you'll learn about their world. You'll learn about what's happening every day. Even if it's not that interesting, it's a good way to challenge yourself creatively. How do I make this interesting? Or you might not think it's interesting at first, but then you might discover some things too. That's the beauty of every story that I've captured, is you just never know where it's going to take you. Some of my favorite stories I thought were going to be amazing weren't so good. Some of the stories I thought were a little bit mundane turned out to be really visually interesting. You just kind of never know until you put the time in. So if you can document a family member, these are stories for like people that are a little bit shy in the beginning, but it's a great way to start. Spend a day with them. See how that goes. But those skills you're going to obtain from documenting someone in their everyday life are fantastic. Documenting photography at its core, understanding it and working on that craft, will help you in all sorts of other types of photography. I use my background in documentary photography and shadowing people with their permission, but it helped me out with my wedding photography, helped me later on with my wildlife photojournalism stories, even helped me out with my commercial photography. It helped me learn how to work on the fly and react on the fly, and see things a little bit differently. Story idea number three is to go out there and document an artist. First of all, again, in the beginning, I always find people start big. They want to shadow a police officer or photograph at a prison. Those things are hard to get access to, even for professional journalists who are trained to get access to these kind of things, or have a newspaper behind them that can help get them in. So if you're just starting out and you have no idea how to do these things, all these stories are attainable, and that's the point. Because if you just make excuses, you're never going to get around to it. So follow an artist friend. The reason why is artists tend to understand what we're doing a little bit more. They tend to be a little bit more open to the idea of someone shadowing them. A lot of times artists live in isolated lives, by themselves, painting or the sculptors or whatever art they do. And I'll mix in craftsmen and craftswomen in there as well. So anyone that makes things with their hands or builds things. In addition to them more likely being open to you documenting them, because they'll understand a fellow artist and what we're trying to do. In addition to that, they tend to be visually interesting. They're building stuff, they're doing things, they're not sitting in an office every day and just like a cubicle or sitting in front of a computer. So, think about that. They're working with their hands, the shots you can get of their hands, the shots of the things they're building, the details of the things they're building, the pulled back shots of their workspace, the portraits you can get with them and whatever they're building, whatever they're painting, whatever they're creating. They're making stuff. And you're making stuff too. You're making pictures, right? You can bond over that, and it's usually very attainable. There's probably, all of you out there probably have an artist friend. If not, just ask around. I'm sure you can find someone who's willing to let you document them. And that's supposed to be it. But you know what? I had a little bonus one I'm going to throw in there. Number 4 on this list. Little bonus one, supposed to be 3. I'm going to give you 4. Little bonus one is to do a self-portrait project. This is for people that are like really shy. Really, that's a good way to start too, because it'll help you get comfortable with your camera. Technically, if you're not there yet, it'll help you get comfortable with your style of photography, how you like to direct, even directing yourself, get you more comfortable with your composition, how you work and your process of working, like how you like to set things up and all that. It's good to start with yourself. You're not gonna be embarrassed around yourself. I mean, most of us aren't. So start with a self-portrait project. And don't just like take selfies of yourself. Like put some deep thought into it. Think about like what emotion do you want to capture about yourself? What characteristics, or maybe a bunch of different emotions or a bunch of different characteristics about yourself that you want to capture. And then put a lot of thought into, okay, now that you've got your concept, you've got your theme, how do you match that with your composition, with your light, with your exposures, with the expression, with your posture and things like that? I mean, that's the great thing about doing self-portraits is you really can fail without feeling embarrassed at all. You can take that time, you can slow down, like the ultimate slowdown. It's hard, technically, it can be challenging, the remote triggering and timers and things like that, but once you get the hang of it, once you get in position, you know, it's great freedom because you really can slow down, experiment, and try different things. I encourage people out there, if you can draw it out a little bit ahead of time. If you can't draw like me, then just like come up with some basic concepts, practice them on like a mannequin, if you can get a mannequin. Who has a mannequin? Actually, we have one, but that sounded weird. I should explain that. We have a mannequin because my commercial business, and we put clothes on it and stuff like that when we're doing like samples for clients. But do have a mannequin, doesn't end up in the bedroom, but you know, we're just an object that you can place in this. You can understand where the light's going to fall if you're using artificial light or natural light. But put a lot of thought into it, put some deep thought into it. I did a self-portrait project during the pandemic, and it was very therapeutic for me. I mean, I took some shots about sort of expressing what it was like to be an expat living in Vietnam, a country thriving during the pandemic compared to my home country of the U.S., which didn't do so well through the pandemic. And so I kind of wanted to play around with those emotions and how I felt, so I worked on a self-portrait project, and it was very therapeutic for me, and I have it up on my website, so you can check it out at justamont.com if you're interested. So those are some project ideas. I know it can be a daunting task, but it's so important in your growth, no matter where you're at in your photography, even if you're just starting out or all the way up to a pro that's been doing it for a long time, like I've been. So working on a personal project, I encourage all of you guys out there to do all 4 of these if you can, but that can be overwhelming, so start with one and work on it. And again, don't worry that this isn't like the legacy project. This is the foundation that you're building. Doing this work now is going to help you when you do find that legacy project, when you want to go after that epic story or that epic global project, or even if you don't want to do that, that's fine too. All of the time spent working on these projects will help you down whatever avenue you want to go down with your photography, because you're learning about yourself. You're learning creatively who you are as a photographer, you're developing your style, and you're developing your skills as a visual storyteller. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to have a wonderful day.